Welcome to the Week in Italian Startup, where we discuss the latest highlights happening in the Italian tech and investment ecosystem. All right, Nico, thank you very much for joining again. Today, the Week in Italian Startup, a weekly session that me and Niccolo, we handle together, going through the main news regarding the Italian startup ecosystem. So it's every Monday at 6:30, available live on Clubhouse and YouTube, and also on Spotify, and since last week, Apple Podcast. So we're expanding and conquering the podcasting world.
Remind me to update the ending notes of the newsletter, because
yeah.
we
need to tell
the Apple Podcast platform. Yes,
exactly.
Sure.
Fantastic. All right, so let's get started immediately because we have a lot to talk about. I think there's been a lot of movements. Also recapping what has been happening also in last week, but not only. So there are a few things to discuss about, extremely interesting. So let's get to it. So first interesting deal is about Oversonic Robotics. So this is the space of humanoids robot. From Tesla onward, things has been populating again the news. And what has been going on with these guys?
Oversonic Robotics is a humanoid robot startup, and they are developing robots that they expect to work alongside humans in industrial or commercial settings. Yep. So they are developing their own take on this market. They raised this amount, which is not clearly defined, but they say in their post that the company was valued 14 million euros.
Oh, wow.
And the investor, which is a family office basically, acquired 1/3 of the company. So more or less, they should have raised around 4.5 million euros.
Interesting, extremely interesting. And they look like, I didn't know them before, they look like they're very prepared in terms of robotics. And I believe also that the company, that the family office is also related with some other companies doing like components for electronic machinery, like Sabaf, I believe. So there is it's not a random investment. Essentially, there must be like a strategy from a corporate perspective. So that's definitely an interesting deal for them.
Yep, that might be.
Very interesting.
Usually we are not, in Italy, we don't see a lot of deals on robotics. So this is quite an interesting one. In particular, humanoid robotics is quite fascinating. It's a bit of science fiction.
Oh yeah, completely. Future of work, replacing humans. It's gonna happen, man. It's gonna happen.
Well, I mean, they start working with us and then working instead of us, and then who knows?
Exactly, but we just need to make sure that the laws, the Azimuth laws, are there. So
yeah, that's exactly.
We should be fine.
He knew
already. Awesome. So let's move on. Holding company of the Agnelli family from Turin, from Fiat, invested 50 million in MyTVS, which is a one-stop shop car service from India. That's a very interesting deal. So I was checking exactly how the website, what kind of offering was happening there, and it's really like a widespread of services. Doesn't look too sexy, to be honest, in terms of website or user experience, but definitely it's a step for Fiat to be in the auto service in India. So that's pretty relevant for sure.
Yeah, exactly. There must be something in there. I mean, if you think about it, in India there lives probably 1 billion people or something along that number. And it's probably quite a growing market. So this might be something quite interesting for them, and it's close to their core market.
Absolutely.
Agnelli family, they're the fathers of Fiat now. So makes sense.
Yeah, and I mean, I wouldn't call it like a corporate VC sort of move, because Exor is so in many businesses, so it's really the whole strategy is part of their global strategy, I believe. So that's definitely something to consider.
I agree.
Interesting. All right, talking about liquidity events, big company, Telepass, Italian company, doing essentially devices for mobility and transportation, acquired Wise Motion, confirming how Telepass is really one of the company in Italy at the forefront of the technology, both in terms of involvement as a company and in the media. Essentially, they've been really doing like a lot of work in tech. They've been pretty much everywhere. Pre-COVID, they were like in all events that I have attended, and these guys are moving fast.
Yep, I agree with you. They've been quite active in the last few years. And they are investing heavily in digitalization of their services. So they're basically becoming an end-to-end mobility company.
Exactly.
Everything other than the actual pieces of steel moving around on the streets. And this acquisition is the kickstart of their own internal fully digital arm. I read a little bit about Wise Emotions. I don't know whether you had the opportunity.
Yep.
Another startup, in a sense. It was founded by 3 guys from the Polytechnic of Milan, 3 software engineers. And they have 80 people now. So they grow quite heavily in a few years. And they focus on developing mobile-first applications. So let's say something about the Telepass strategy.
Yeah. So this is a very smart way to actually enter the app space by getting a big and strong player and then see what kind of synergies they will come up with. So that's definitely like a super interesting move from the guys at Telepass that really seem to know what they're doing.
Expect Telepass to be in your car and in your pockets.
Oh yeah, probably it's gonna only be in your pocket or on your watch, I believe, until we get to like all chipped, and then it's gonna be in your neck or something.
Yeah, that's probably one of the news that we'll discuss about later on.
Fantastic. All right, moving on. Culturemarcato.com. So from someone that doesn't know much about soccer, I know this company. I know Culturemarcato.com. So it's a pretty big deal. Very interesting coordination of elements because at the top we essentially have a huge private equity company, TPG, which is based between San Francisco and Texas. And they've been aggregating some of the biggest like digital brands in the soccer space. So I was, even if I'm not a fan, I really appreciate the fact of these guys kind of trying to pull off like a huge aggregator for soccer content.
That's it. Then you know much more than me about this deal.
Yeah, actually, I was going through the portfolio of the company, TPG. So they essentially they have a bunch of product from private equity to real estate to hedge funds. So it's really a huge investment company. And inside their portfolio, they have also like some big deals like Airbnb, Spotify, some of the biggest the biggest like names in the game, including like Phil's Coffee, like coffee chain in California, really delicious actually, but nobody knows. But it's working really well. So these guys are not only doing tech in general, so they're not like super verticalized, but it's definitely something that that they've been developing, sort of aggregating a lot of elements, and apparently that's what they're doing with Footballco. As well, where they are putting together some of the major brands and making sure probably to wrap it up into a big company, which is going to be the behemoth of soccer online or something on those lines.
Probably the classic platform strategy of private equity. Yeah, exactly. And it makes sense because soccer is quite international. So
yeah, absolutely.
There are synergies there. Nice.
Absolutely. All right. So earlier in August, a few more news. one related to impact investing. Italy has been also in the forefront of people raising funds and vehicles to invest in impact initiatives. We've seen that happening in the past, I believe, 4 years. This is another great example where essentially one company, well, actually one entity that used to be a foundation, Opes, is now becoming an investment vehicle in order to invest in impact project. And it's fully backed by VentureItaly, which is the fund of CDP Venture Capital, which is the big mother of all like venture capital investment. Yeah, we have a lot of loops today. We have a lot of like companies and companies and companies, and people will see later with Futura Invest, which is pretty complicated. So I'll let you do that. But going back to impact investing, that's definitely like a great trend, which is, again, we said that in some episodes before. Impact investing is huge in Italy, is moving fast, and is getting the attention of a lot of players.
If you take a look at the investors in the new fund, there are the major names from Italy. Also, the European Investment Fund committed capital to the fund.
Interesting.
Then we have Compagnia San Paolo,
of course,
Fondazione CRT, Fondazione Social Venture, which is absolutely close to the market. So the major investors in Italy actually put capital into this vehicle. So it says something about our attention as a nation with impact investments. It's good to read, good to know.
Absolutely. There is a lot of skepticism, though, I believe, beside Italy about what is considered impact. So it's a huge debate, but still we're holding up. It's good. I like the idea of having, a fund with a specific mission. So it's definitely a very, very interesting trend that people are trying to make it work even in the investment side. So maybe the fact that I don't know much about impact investments, but maybe the fact that the fund has been originated by the foundation that maybe had more attention to the way capital is deployed, is used. Because one of the big issues with impact is how capital is deployed and the effect of launching initiatives in, for example, in the third world, in supporting businesses in more complex environments and so on and so forth. So maybe that track record will help with better selection, better investments, and so on. Awesome point. That's good. Definitely a positive trend on the positive side. All right, talking again about automotive, Tau Group. This is a company developing protective coatings for electric engine. I really liked that you point this out because usually in the electrification space, there's a lot of people working on batteries, so it's energy supply side, but really few people are trying to reinvent how the electric engine operates and is optimized. So I really like that you pointed out because it's pretty unique. This deal is very, very unique, I believe.
Yeah, that was interesting because I didn't think that specific, so the protective coatings would be that important, but apparently they are. And the company, it is interesting also, the company is very specific in talking about the low impact of their coatings.
Oh, wow.
So there's also an aspect of environmental impacts.
ESG sort of deal. Very interesting. No, for sure. And they did pretty well, like 10 million Series A. It's a huge deal, actually. So very interesting, particularly also because it's been not only from Italian investors, but also from other European investors. So definitely there is something there to keep an eye on. So Belgium,
exactly, a Belgium-based investment company with ArcelorMittal actually between the main investors. So
awesome. So switching completely from automotive and to healthcare and in particular brain interfaces, corticale, that's kind of the equivalent. I mean, the Italian Neuralinks, if you will. Some people have defined corticale in this way. Interesting thing is that it's a spin-off of the Italian Institute of Technology from Genova. So we've seen how these companies have, some of their company have been like successful in raising consecutive rounds. So this is a great example, I believe.
And it's a bleeding edge type of technology in this case, because it's going after exactly Neuralink, as you said. They expect to make the technology available by the end of the year, I believe. So,
wow, that's
at least for testing.
Sure.
But that's ambitious. I agree, and I didn't expect that type of technology to be so close to being tried out, at least in the laboratory.
Yeah. And they really have a medical angle. So they're really trying to work on Alzheimer and Parkinson's. So how the area of the brain that are basically influenced by this kind of disease, and how they can intervene through specific electrode, data collection and stimulation. So that's definitely a very, very strong mission. So it's not only trying to read the thoughts of animals like Neuralink showed in the marketing of the company, but definitely something to keep an eye on. Cool, very cool. All right, so let's talk about capital access in general and how Italy is moving in terms of allowing retail investors to actually get access to sophisticated, I would say, vehicles that are investing in startups. So we talked about Azimuth before, big Italian asset manager, which has been developing a lot of interesting product over the years, and it's definitely again in the forefront of the early stage investing, I would say, from the retail perspective. So let's maybe talk a little more about that.
Yes, as you said, so Azimuth is a pioneer in this space. So they launched already at least 3 different funds that are open to their private base of investors. Okay. So it's not exactly something that you can purchase with €100, but still, still is much more retail than traditional venture capital funds. So they provide this type of access to startups. One fund is actually managed by P101. One fund invests alongside Jellyfy, and the third one invests...
Italia 500. So what is interesting is that all these products, essentially, they are compartimenti, which means basically are part of a bigger fund, which is the LTIF structure fund. So it's called AZ LTIF. And it's for non-European, LTIF is just it's another way to classify a certain kind of funds, essentially. And they've been playing with these and giving them like themes. So, for example, the Ali Crowd is basically a part of the AZ LTIF, which is managed essentially also through a crowd funding company, Mama Crowd. So they're trying to work on this idea of getting their LTIF coin, partnering with some companies like also P101 and other, in this case, like private equity funds, and then offering this product. I think it's a very interesting strategy.
Yeah, if you think about it, so they don't tell you that they are good at scouting, at selecting or at managing the investments. So they let their partner to do that, because P101, Jellyfy, Mama Crowd, they're good at doing exactly that. Azimuth is good at raising funds
totally.
because of their huge customer base. So it makes absolute sense.
It's a good strategy.
And they paved the way, because apparently Intesa Sanpaolo is following suit. That's the news of the week.
That's exactly the news of it's a good segue to the news of the week. Exactly. So Intesa Sanpaolo acquired Neva Ventures, and then basically Intesa transformed this company into an SGR, Società per Risparmio Gestito. And so tell us why this is particularly interesting and why is it important?
Well, Neva Ventures has always been somehow the corporate VC arm of Intesa. So they created a more defined position into their group for the for this investment arm. They created the SGR, as you said.
Why do they need? Why they needed to move it to an SGR? I don't know much about why would be a good move. Probably it's just easier, because I know that SGR in general, they have like a pretty strict compliance requirements in Italy. So it takes some work actually. Maybe for them it was easy in a way.
That's easy. They're a bank. That's probably
exactly.
And SGR, they're managing what they own somehow. So that's quite easy. But it's probably the best way if they expect to manage and create more funds. It has a specific governance.
Very good point. Very good point.
And probably exactly the fact that they want to allow their own private customers to invest in the vehicle. Probably with the SGR is much easier, because a lot of the way the SGR works is, makes it easy enough or ready enough to also manage the private clientele. So it might make sense, but I'm no expert here.
No, sure. And they launched this Neva First, which is actually a fund in all its form. And the SGR essentially is on the top of the fund, managing essentially like the allocation.
The managing company, exactly.
Awesome. Very interesting.
Exactly. And they have, the fund is currently raised probably 150 million, more or less, from institutional investors, including the bank, of course, which is one of the main investors in the fund.
Yeah.
And they are going to offer 100 million, I believe, more or less, to the private investors, so to basically almost retail.
Yeah. What is so their goal, I'm reading now, it's 250 million. Again, being a bank, probably it's not a big deal at all. What I think is very interesting to notice is the fact that there is basically a split between Italy and foreign. So it's not only a fund that will invest in Italy, but is also keep particular attention to the foreign investment. So as I'm reading now, is essentially the overall strategy is a 70% foreign company with 30% Italian company. So they're really going after also maybe some of the big player, and not only trying to support Italy in some form or another. I thought that was particularly interesting. As a bank, it makes perfect sense for them.
Yeah, it does. It's not obvious, but it absolutely does.
Awesome. Fantastic. Beautiful. Now let's always talking about Intesa. Let's get dirty, and then let's talk about this incredible structure that you titled "The Holding That Holds Them All." I really enjoyed that. That was extremely good. And in fact, this is a company with a lot of twists and turns and a lot of things inside of that. So let's tell the story. What's the story?
Yeah, that's just an article from BBC that I was reading, and it was quite interesting because sometimes you think about the VC firms as owned by their general partners, no? Mm-hmm. And that's true. Often there are also other type of shareholders in these firms, and it turns out that Futura Invest SPA, which is this type of holding company, is a shareholder in many investors, VC, and also private equity firms in Italy. And the holders of the main investors in the Futura Invest company are Intesa Sanpaolo, again, Fondazione Caliplo, again, Fondazione Nasarco, Mediolanum Vita, State Street. So there are a lot of notable investors in this holding. And the holding is a shareholder in Daco SGR, that's a VC firm, Vertis SGR, another VC firm, L Venture, an accelerator and investor.
Exactly.
Eulero Capital, another investor which started recently, last year, I believe, or so.
Ipazia, SRL, and it's pretty complex. I mean, it looks like these guys, they created like a monster which essentially is harboring risk by definitely like spraying and getting shares of a lot of great players in Italy. So this is essentially, I don't know how it started. I don't know how Futura started originally, but it's a very interesting strategy to aggregate some of the best shareholding in the Italian industry. So the diversification here is maximal, and they are placing themselves in some of the most strategic like funds, I believe.
Yeah, so it seems at least quite a few of them. And it's interesting because that's not investment in the fund. So that's not a limited partner position. That's a governance position in the managing company. So it's a different type of approach. I don't know whether it is something that abroad happens. But it seems that there are many firms that have their traditional LP investors as shareholders.
Exactly. So my knowledge of the US VC space is that usually like bigger VC tend to be limited partner in maybe smaller VC or very verticalized VCs. And that's one way to essentially help out and participate, especially if there is no way that there is like a conflict between like the verticals. That's a great way to essentially diversify. But in terms of getting like a company that holds share of a fund in this kind of structure, sounds to me it's kind of an Italian thing in a way, where maybe it's easier, it feels easier, where in the US you kind of become a limited partner and then you let the management team do the work. In this case, as you say, I totally agree. It looks like they want control, but at the same time, they're not necessarily like limited partners. So yeah, it's
they are more than that.
Exactly.
I don't know about the specific governance rules, but still, you are in the manco, which is different than being in the fund.
Totally, and with significant stakes actually. So with not like small stakes, with actually like significant part of shareholding. So that's pretty aggressive. Fantastic.
Very interesting article. Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you, Nico, for pointing it out. One last thing, which I thought it was very interesting, and I think it is worth pointing out to the listener, is the Xjobs, just to end up on this note. So this is essentially like a big jobs aggregator for Italian startup, where you can actually search for jobs and hiring companies. It's a big database run by CDP Ventures, again, one of the biggest players in Italy. So definitely worth considering if you're looking for startup jobs in Italy. That's definitely something good.
Yep. As the readers probably know, because we never talked about it, I have been running an experiment about collecting and distributing job positions from startups, reading the newsletter in particular. Yep. So I'm not collecting anything, just, if anybody wants to upload the job position, they can, and the reader can take a look at these positions crowdsourced by my readers. But it seems that CDP is doing a very curated and structured work at putting together all the job positions from the startups from their portfolio, also in direct portfolio, but they're opening the platform to anybody. So if you just want to be listed there, it's free. You can just follow a link and apply to be hosted on the platform.
Awesome. And this is extremely positive, because it's definitely on the trend of the best practices of venture capital firms. Like the biggest venture capital firm in the world, they have like a huge interest, and they do a huge work usually in posting jobs and finding recruits for their own portfolio companies. So it's a big part of the VC job from what I can tell. Now CDP is really aligning this best practice and try to have those practices inside the company. So it's an awesome job. Again, we are evolving as a nation and becoming more sophisticated venture capital investors. That's good news.
Yeah, they're taking probably a further step than a standard VC firm, because they are opening the platform to anybody, to any Italian startup.
Perfect.
Which makes sense considering they are, the original name of CDP Venture Capital is Fondo Nazionale Innovazione, so the National Fund for Innovation. So
they have to. They kind of have to now. Like if they if you call your fund like that, you're like, yeah, I have to do this.
That's part of the mission.
No way out.
So that's so. Long story short, from now on, I will weekly publish new interesting job position from the companies that are on that platform. So
cool.
A new piece on the newsletter.
You will make a selection essentially. So you're gonna curate a little bit what is happening, maybe the new positions and so on and so forth. That's
awesome. The team will send me some of the positions, and I will publish just a few of them, the most interesting ones. But if anybody wants, you can just go on the platform Xjobs, take a look for all the open positions there.
Awesome. All right, so I think that's all for the week. Thank you, Nicola, for joining. And again, this episode is going to be available on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcast. And please feel free to reach out, to subscribe to Nicola newsletter, and reach out to us if you have a question or suggestions. So thank you, Nicola, very much. And I'll see you next week.
Thank you, Giacomo. It was a pleasure as always. Have a great week.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Thanks.